this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time.
Hi there and welcome to, I believe it's the 21st episode of the Sage Running Podcast. Sorry it's been a while. We do want to get more podcasts out, so really appreciate it if you're listening, tuning in, as well as watching it on YouTube. Special guest Coach Sandi. Back to update you guys on marathon training. We'll talk about marathon training in general. We'll talk about my plans for, as her being the coach and me being the athlete perspective, for the Olympic trials qualifying race. There's been a change in plans as well as a training update. If you've been following the YouTube vlog, I've had a couple workout videos, mainly just long run videos where Sandi bravely goes out on the bike. But first order of business, Coach Sandi just raced this past weekend at the Moab Trail Marathon out in Moab, Utah. It was the USATF USA National Trail Marathon Championship, and she ran a great race out there. I was out watching it. I got a YouTube video with some brief clips of the race, but she came in second for the women, was closing really fast, right behind Renee, what's her last name? Metaver, who won.
She's my rabbit teammate, so it's a good person to lose to. She's a 2:27 marathoner, so
yeah, super fast.
Lightning fast for a woman for sure.
And it came down to like it was just a matter of seconds, less than a minute between first and second at the finish there. So, second place to Coach Sandi, really a testament to all her hard work and her training, coaching herself. Obviously a successful program. Congratulations on that.
Thanks. And
then also we'll talk about, this is a business plug, but since we both run sagerunning.com, coaching business, we have updated all of our training plans.
That was a labor of love.
Yeah.
It took us a few months to get that done.
Yeah, so new format, easier to read, hopefully more user-friendly. We tinkered with some of the workouts. The core principles are all pretty much the same, but inspirational quotes, just updated some things on the website, so you can check that out at sagerunning.com.
I think some of the biggest things we changed were the long runs for some of the ultra plans. We just made some of the long runs a little faster and gave them more purpose.
Yeah.
But like, we sincerely want people to do well on our plans. Like that means a lot to us, and like it's what we really do as our job is sincerely wanting people to reach their goals. So
yeah.
we did put some heart in the plans, and we hope that shows now.
Yeah, more details on the long runs. But yeah, our motto is athlete empowerment, so you could use that hashtag sagerunning.com. But yeah, let's get into the main part of the podcast here.
Yeah.
There's any more announcements or touch on stuff. So if you guys, I guess, coming off my last race was UTMB 100, and we decided that go back to the roads, try to qualify for the 2020 US Olympic Trials Marathon. It's going to be in 2020, so they're actually really generous this time. They give you over 2.5 years to qualify for this race, which is always a top goal of mine. It's just kind of a thing I really enjoy. I don't plan on racing a ton of road marathons, but it's always, the goal's right there. They haven't changed the time. It's still, you just have to run under sub 2:19, which is about, I believe it's about 3:17 per kilometer pace. I might have done the math wrong on that, but about 5:17 per mile average for the marathon to run under 2:19, and that's what you got to do. So originally after UTMB, I was looking at the calendar and I was thinking 12 weeks I could do Cal International in December, and Coach Sandi was like, it's a little bit of a crapshoot, not very much time coming off of a horrible race at UTMB. So we've changed the plans, and you want to talk about what's going on?
I mean, to put it short, Sage just decided to Houston instead. Like, he just wasn't responding to the training as quickly as we would have liked to realistically do well at CIM. Like, the chance is still there, but it wasn't worth the risk of doing CIM, not making the goal, and then trying to put things back together for another fast marathon in a month. So it was just better this time around to play it smart, not do CIM, and go for Houston.
Yeah, so Houston will it'll be in January 2018, and it'll give me 6 more weeks to train, which actually isn't a lot, but hopefully if I could fine tune my speed and get the the running economy or efficiency on flat road running back, especially around marathon race pace velocity and faster, I'd be a lot more confident. But basically coming off of slogging around in the mountains all summer, a lot of really slow mountain miles and power hiking, with a big emphasis before UTMB, which obviously didn't play out real well at UTMB for me. It's been a rough transition going back to the roads, the flat roads, and it's actually even worse than it was before when I tried the any surface, any distance motto, because at least when I did marathons back in 2015, I did 4 road marathons in a span of 10 months. I didn't finish UTMB that year because I had an injury, and I also was doing races that were more flat and runnable rather than mountain races and not as many 100-milers. So I think it's just been more drastic going from mountain 100-mile to road marathon, especially at these paces.
Well, you just hit on a key point, especially at these paces. So let's talk about that a little bit more to build a basic understanding for the audience. We coach athletes who go from 100 miles and a few months later they can set a PR in the marathon. Why is it harder to transition from at your level? Because I think we've seen that with a bunch of elite ultra runners where they start off in the road. They, in 2016 or before that, they hit the Olympic trials standard, but then they try to run the Olympic trials or a marathon after, and they're not close to their PR anymore. Well, maybe they're a couple minutes, but they're not running their PR anymore. I think the one exception I can think of is Max King, who's just really good at going back to the marathon, but other athletes haven't shown that. So why do you think that is?
And yeah, you bring up a good point, because through Sage Running, we coach a lot of sub 3-hour marathon runners, low 3-hour marathon runners, 250 type of marathon runners, and they're doing any surface, any distance. And I think for most people, ultra running builds a great base, even if you're doing mountain ultra running, for your road marathoning. But you start getting down into the low 2-hour range in the marathon. You start talking about people that have probably been running for most of their lives, right? I've been running for 20 years year round. I've focused professionally right after college, after coming off of 5Ks and 10Ks, on the road marathon. And so the gains are a lot more marginal. Everything's, seconds are worth more just because you're in the low 2-hour range, but also you've kind of tapped out more and more of your max potential. So if any little tweaks off, it's the difference between a 221 and a 219 and a 218 is actually pretty big. Whereas if maybe you've dabbled in some marathons, you've run 320, maybe you could run 310, then you do some ultra training, you get in some good base, you actually could go out and run a sub 3-hour marathon, maybe you smash your PR and run a 250. That's more of a common story, and then transition back to ultra running, and you have a lot more potential usually to improve. Whereas for me, I'm a little more tapped out, I think, and anything that goes wrong, any specific thing at these velocities, at these paces in training that throws you off, makes the difference between qualifying and not qualifying. And of course, 2016 I missed the Olympic trials by 12 seconds and ran 4 marathons all between 219 and 220, but just couldn't get down under 219.
So I think that's a good segue into what has been your problem going into this marathon cycle so far. Like, what was the actual reason? Well, just telling the audience that about why we decided CIM was too soon.
I'm still chewing my cookie. We'll get there. Sorry guys, I'm just really hungry eating this. It is a vegan plant-based cookie. It's not very green, but it's really good. I'm drinking some tea too. Well, it comes down to one of my talks I've done on YouTube about variable running economy. It's a matter of efficiency, and I think that's been the problem. Is after UTMB I took a break, I lost some fitness, still had some residual base fitness just from years and years of running. I was able to build my mileage up pretty fast, but I also went from running 90% of my mileage, weekly mileage on trails and mountains, to all of a sudden doing it on pavement and bike paths. And I haven't gotten injured. I feel okay, but I think the skeletal muscular stress has really sapped my stride, sapped my power. And the same note, also the slogging around in the mountains at 12-minute mile pace all summer, compounded by a very slow UTMB, at least for my expectations. It was a really big positive split race where I slowed down massively in the second half, has made it so that everything short and flat and fast on uniform surfaces like the road feels like a sprint. And I didn't have the hip extension or hip flexion that I used to have when I was doing a lot of speed work. I don't seem to have the power in my stride on push-off and the explosiveness that I had when I was doing a lot of speed work, track workouts and road running. And so I think it's just a matter of time of reprogramming the neuromuscular system and reprogramming the leg muscles to get that stride extension, to get that power back, to get that relative speed back. And what we found is Coach Sandi wrote out a program for Cal International, which is actually coming up in about, 2-3 weeks now?
It's a little over 2 weeks.
Actually, it's three.
Oh,
it's about 3.5
weeks. 3.5.
Yeah,
right,
3 weeks from this weekend. But we're not doing it because it's too soon. Because I haven't even. I started doing some workouts, and it was a rushed process. And some of the speed workouts, like kilometer repeats, close to marathon pace, or even just trying to do tempo runs or 2-mile repeats, 3,200 meter repeats, close to marathon pace or a little faster. I just couldn't hit the paces. Everything felt like a sprint. Even marathon pace now does not feel very comfortable. And when I look at some of these workout failures, I just get so discouraged I'd stop doing the workout.
Which is a problem, though. And this is something I've struggled with coaching Sage with, is that from the beginning of this training, he expected to be somewhere he wasn't ready to be. So he had this pace in his head of what he's done in the past. And I've mentioned this, I think, in one of our training videos already. You have this pace in your head of what you've done in the past, and you thought a few weeks into training you could hit those paces again, even though before you do shorter races and build up to marathon, and now you're coming off this mountain 100 and you're trying to hit those paces throughout the back again. And because you had those paces in your head and you weren't hitting them, you get discouraged and just stop the workout instead of realizing there's still something to benefit of finishing the workout, so you could still get strength from that and keep on improving. So if you just stop a workout, you're not going to get those benefits from the workout anymore.
Yeah, so mentally it's been very hard, I guess. And we came to the rude awakening and realization that this was going to take more time, which Coach Sandi suspected all along. We knew trying to peak for Cal International was going to be a big risk. It's not just an injury risk, because I built my mileage up. I averaged 110 miles per week for the last 6 weeks in a row now, with hitting 120 miles a week a couple times, and I'll continue doing that, probably push it to 130 miles per week or over 200 kilometers per week.
I should say that's one thing you've done really well, is this is the most consistent you've been in a long time.
Yeah, if you look at my Strava, you could just see the bars, and you could actually see the training before UTMB was actually pretty bad, with consistency. And in the past, when I've overtrained, it's usually this leg exhaustion and my stride is sapped. It's not. The heart and lungs are in plenty of good shape. You can see my heart rate data on Strava for these long runs, and the long runs have been doing fine, of course. And coming from ultras, that actually does obviously make more sense. You're still good at rolling out for a 20 mile or 25 mile or 32K long run at a pretty strong pace, because that's kind of what the backbone of base building, aerobic base building, and ultra running is. But it's when you get down to the nitty gritty and you have to go do a road session of repeat kilometers or repeat 800 meters, and you're starting to run 5K or 10K pace, that efficiency is not there. You're not going to be hitting the times that you want right away, especially when you're starting to put in big mileage and your stride has gotten sloppy. So I think that's been the hardest thing for me, and it's a transition for sure. So we're gonna do more actual like hill sprints for power.
So who told you to do hill sprints and when?
You had probably mentioned them briefly early on. It is a staple. I mean, you've been certified with the Lydiard training philosophy as well, which is kind of where periodization as well as hill bounding and hill workouts for even flat track and road athletes has started. So you knew that all along. So I admit I'm wrong.
You gave me a hard time It was like a month ago I told Sage, like, oh, I think we should start doing hill sprints to get power. And he literally gave me a 5-minute talk on why he didn't have to do hill sprints.
I don't remember that.
And then last week Sage was like, oh, I should start doing hill sprints again. I'm just kidding.
These cookies are hard to eat. I can't chew them very fast. But like 10-second hill sprints.
Yeah,
15.
really short.
Because the other thing that I feared, and I can't even confirm this, is that my musculature in my legs actually changed. I get these mountain legs, and I feel this extra thickness around my quad that I didn't have when I was a road runner. My legs have always been on the thicker side, at least compared to like some of those elite road runners with the really lean legs. But your musculature is definitely worked differently. And you do mountain running, ultra running, and all of a sudden you got to run on a perfectly flat surface. And so I feel like there's some mechanical problems, as well as the idea is to stimulate the fast twitch muscle fibers again.
Yeah.
And as I get older, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. You know, I'm turning 32 next week. The speed doesn't come back as fast, and it's not there all the way. But again, we're not training for a 5K or 10K. We are training for a marathon. So I think hopefully I could get it back. And we're also not even training for a PR marathon. We're just training for a sub 219. And that's really the any service, any distance goal. After I hit this goal, I do want to go back into ultras though and do mountain running. I'm not sure if I want to do 100 milers right away though. Those have scared me. But yeah, we could say, you know, compared to our sagerunning.com training plans, the BQ Boston plan, we've got a lot of people sub 3-hour marathons. People we coach through sagerunning.com, a lot of PRs in the marathon who mix it up. You know, the fundamentals of marathon training are fairly similar, but when you get into the specifics of the quality workouts, the speed workouts, so to speak, you start to see differences between people that run, let's say, 250 in the marathon, or you know, knocking on a sub 3-hour marathon, versus running under a 230 or 220 marathon. There's just going to be differences in how you attack the workouts, because the whole pace spectrum gets squeezed down basically. If you could run a half marathon close to 60 minutes flat, which a lot of these trials qualifiers could do, you could run a 64, 65 minute half marathon. That's actually, half marathon pace becomes very close to your lactate threshold pace, your tempo run pace. Whereas for people that run, let's say, over a 40-minute 10K, who might be running in the low 3 hours for a marathon, their lactate threshold pace is actually closer to their 10K race pace. So you start to see these bigger differences. And part of it's could come down to genetics. Part of it comes down to, you know, how much time you have to train, what your peak weekly mileage is. Some of it comes down to your running form. You know, it comes down to all these factors, your history in the sport and all that. So what I do and what you see on the YouTube vlogs isn't necessarily what we'd recommend for a lot of people. And some of my failures and the reasons why I fail don't necessarily mean that's a big danger for you or someone else.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to talk more on that, or kind of just scraped over some general marathon training stuff.
I'd actually like to go back to something, because I think this is an interesting point to talk about, is running efficiency from ultras back to road marathon. So one thing, data points that we noticed in Sage's recent training with running efficiency and power is that he didn't have the leg power. So that's why we're talking about hill sprints again, to gain more leg power. But what was happening, and you could see this in some of his workouts, where he was trying to run really fast and his form looked okay, but at the same time, like, if you're trained, like, you could look and see that something was just a little bit off, and he just wasn't getting that leg power. And so when he actually tried to run faster, what would happen is that his cadence would just go up. And sometimes that's a good thing, but in Sage's case it wasn't. It was going up from like 180 to 200. That's because you weren't recruiting like the more like muscle fibers and power out of your legs, and you're just trying to get faster by hiring your cadence. But you really do need that power to go faster. And I think sometimes that's kind of a myth that, like, oh, you can run just by using gravity and falling forward. Like, no, that's total crap. You need force and leg power to run fast.
Yeah, I mean, speed is a product of your cadence, stride rate, steps per minute, multiplied by your stride length. And obviously when you're sprinting, it's going to be very, very high,
right.
And your stride length's going to be very long. But between 5K and marathon race pace, for most people, it's generally going to be most efficient at least over 170 steps per minute, but probably also under 200 steps per minute, or even under 195 steps per minute. And what I saw relative on Strava, according to my Garmin 620, was when I'm running at these paces close to race pace or slightly faster, in the past, maybe my cadence, like at Boston, when I got 16th at Boston a couple years ago, stride rate was around 180 for the whole race. Or, you know, maybe I'm doing a workout of kilometer repeats faster marathon pace, and it's around 190, but maybe 185 steps per minute. Whereas a couple weeks ago, I tried to do some repeats, and I'm trying to hit these paces, and I'm really struggling because I'm breathing really hard and it feels like I'm sprinting. And I look at my cadence and it's like 200 steps per minute, and it was like, well, you know, you were trying to overcompensate by just taking faster steps, but your breathing kind of goes in sync with your stride rate, and so you start kind of like hyperventilating. But I also just didn't feel in control. I didn't feel very powerful. And the interesting thing is I actually have trouble inducing a high heart rate on that. Whereas
that's been an interesting part of your data that.
Yeah, and I've had that problem when I've been overtrained doing races. Is my legs will just kind of poop out on me before my heart and lungs do.
Right.
So, you know, it feels like I have lactic acid. It feels like I'm straining. I'm in pain. It feels like I'm sprinting. And my heart rate's actually not as high as it should be. Whereas when I'm getting all the power I can out of myself and I'm running well, I could induce a really high heart rate for a long time. And so it's showing, you know, the choppiness of the stride on the video just kind of showed that, as well as the cadence numbers. And I think part of that is hip extension on the back kick, as well as actual push-off force every time your foot makes contact. I lost some of that elasticity and that springiness and that power that generates a long stride length. And I think, if you don't use it, you kind of lose it. So I probably got too far away from that intensity over the summer leading into UTMB. That's all I could think of.
Yeah, no, I think you said that better than I did. And I think like the takeaway, like what people can actually use from this is like, no matter what you're training for, it might not hurt to do some strides and short little hill sprints just to keep that muscle memory a little bit.
Yeah, and I've gotten into drills now. I do hurdle drills on my sawhorses that I got from Home Depot. I gotta do more core stuff, always more core stuff, work on the hips, hip mobility, but also activating the glutes, which is, you can check out some of Sandy's videos on her YouTube channel. I got a great routine on glute activation video, Running Wild to Believe on YouTube. But yeah, it's a constant battle because you want to stay healthy. You don't want to pull a muscle doing the speed work either, because it's a transition.
Right. Yeah, you shouldn't just...
Like you will pull a muscle if you try to sprint all out and you haven't done any strides before.
Exactly.
You gotta do it on more muscles.
That's true. We should say that. Like if you've never done strides before, like your first couple set of strides should not be all out. They should be
very
a little bit on the
controlled.
slower side until your body gets used to it.
You could even be as slow as like 5K pace for 100 meters. And then you work down to mile race pace, 1500 race pace, or whatever you guess that might be. Maybe it's 90-95% your max speed.
Yeah.
Then after several weeks and you've done your warm-ups, and that's how we implemented them in the Sage running plans too, is strides after easy runs, after warming up, maybe before a workout to loosen up into the workout and things like that.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's I think, you know, with any service, any distance motto, I still think it's a great motto. I love it because it's fun. I love distance running regardless of if it's a 5K, I won't say 5K on the track, I hate those, 10K mountain run, or anything longer, or it's a road marathon, or it's 100 miles, which have also been very challenging and hard for me. You could benefit from a well-rounded training approach and maybe having more intensity in your training. That's what I've learned, is it's hard to get back into some of the intensity after you've been away from it for too long, or you've neglected things like hip flexion and running form and stuff like that. So I think most people can make the transition more seamlessly than I am. I think I'm a bad example of someone who struggles, but I also think it's easier to transition from doing road half marathons and marathons and shorter trail mountain races and then move up in distance. It's easier to go from the road marathons to ultra marathons, or to go from a track background in college, or an informal track background, road racing background, and move into it. Because once you have the speed and intensity down, it's easier to just extend your endurance, or it's easier to just say, oh yeah, I've done these fast marathons and 50Ks. I could do a 50 mile. Granted, individual differences, you might not be as good at the super long distances, but I think, and it depends on the climbing and the technicality of the trails, but in general, I think that transition is easier to make, whereas it is harder to make the transition of running these long mountainous ultras and then running super fast on a track or road at shorter distances. That transition, I think, takes more time, and that's what I've learned going back and forth over the years. And even Max King, who's a jack of all trades, 2:14 marathoner, he has also struggled at the 100-mile distance. Hasn't done the super mountainous ones either, but he's been improving continually through his 30s. So that's inspiring to see. A great example.
Well, and with that said, I do think this marathon block is going to help you a lot in 2018 with ultras, as long as you continue to train smart, of course. But I definitely think you'll see benefits from it in 2018. And even myself, like once I take a little bit off season, I'll start my running year just doing some short road races, because I think that'll be beneficial for later on.
Yeah, like you did last year. I mean, you were doing shorter road races and faster stuff, and then all that's building up to your performance at Moab this last weekend, and performance also in longer ultras. I mean, you did great at North Face last year, as well as a lot of races,
and like,
sky running.
For the trail runners out there, like, it's obviously not what you love to do, but like it's winter here in Boulder anyway, and soon enough the trails are getting icy, so going on the road and doing some workouts, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And it's not like you have to do it for a long time, just like a little bit, and then I think it could help potentially trail races.
It all goes back to periodization in training, and kind of changing the emphasis with the changing of the months, the changing of the seasons, and working on your weaknesses more in the off season, or mixing it up with races that aren't your main jam,
right?
Or, not maybe your main passion or your main talent, but you do them anyway because they make you a better all-around distance runner, and they promote your longevity. Hopefully, that's the idea with me too. Is like, I don't want to always just be burning 100 milers, banging my head against the wall. I do want to go back to 100 miles, and it's been very hard. But at the same time, I love these shorter races, relatively short. Only in the ultra world you say, oh yeah, marathon's the short sprint race, but I think mixing it up's good mentally and physically, and for longevity. And when I initially came into the sport of mutt running 5 years ago, I was coming off of all that marathon training, and I think initially I had some success initially right off the bat. Some of my better races really was all from doing that base of training for the Olympic trials in 2012, running a couple marathons I ran a 2:16 and a 2:18 at the trials. That was a really good base that I think I used that base for my first year or two in ultra running, but then I started getting greedy, and I started trying to do too many long races, and I started getting inconsistent, because I never went back to my roots. But then 2015, did some of that road marathon training. Early in 2015, that was my best performance at Speed Goat in 4 years, was after doing the Boston Marathon. And granted, I crashed and burned kind of at Comrades because it was too close to Boston, and I think the road marathon training definitely helped, and consider getting 16th at Boston my best marathon performance of my life, at least on par with my PR in the marathon from 2011. So
that's taking in consideration that it was a slow year at Boston due to headwind and conditions.
Yeah, it was windy, and I was running by myself a lot, and of course, missed the Olympic trials by 12 seconds. Don't want that to happen this time. I'll keep trying, but you wrote on the plan, it's one and done, so we're gonna try to hit it at Houston, one and done. What's coming up next is I thought, I should jump in a half marathon, but I do want to do a trail half marathon kind of for fun. It's more runnable, it's faster, I think. But it's the Xterra World Trail Championships in Hawaii. So we'll head out for that in just under 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Same
and
day
just
as CIM.
kind of work on the speed instead. Mainly as an excuse to go to Hawaii, I think, in the winter. But, use that as a building block of speed, and hopefully do more speed workouts. And, we'll know by December when we're traveling for the holidays whether or not that speed's kicking in, because then we're hitting the marathon-specific workouts that I think all marathon runners should do to optimize their performance. And that's things like 3x5K, actual 5K repeats, 3K or 2 mile repeats, a very high volume of those at faster than marathon goal pace, so you're slightly faster, as well as mixing in, some of the 2 kilometer repeats, even faster paces, and then still smashing some of those long runs, 40K long run, up to a 40K long run, 24, 25 miles, but mainly 22 mile long runs, and having some fast finishes there, get the legs really calloused. But right now it's about speed, efficiency, and getting that stride power back, which it's been a process, it's been a struggle, but in the context of things, you got to give yourself blocks of months rather than just weeks for this type of transition.
Finishing your workouts.
And you got to be mentally there too. Put everything on the table. So we'll have more vlogs coming your way, as well as future podcasts. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's it.
No, well, thanks so much for everyone for tuning in, or if you're watching the YouTube video here, we'll try to keep you updated, as well as be sure to subscribe for more content on here. Again, thanks to all the Patreon supporters for really making this possible, as well as all the viewers. Title sponsor for me, Hoko11. Rabbit.
I feel lame.
Wow.
I do love Rabbit. So.
You've got great clothes.
Yeah, no, Rabbit's amazing. I just not the upfront promoting, but yeah, Rabbit's an amazing company. You should totally check them out.
Yeah, and
use the code Sandi Ultra for 20% off if you want to check them out. It's started by 2 female runners trying to make high-end running clothes. So, yeah,
they're stylish and comfortable. So, thanks so much, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.